Welcome to 99th Monkey Liberty News for Friday, February 7th, 2014. It's a week away from Valentine's Day. So if you're not prepared for Valentine's Day, perhaps you want to give a little thought to that so that somebody's not disappointed. Our first news article of the day refers to something that I mentioned yesterday. This is from Blacklisted News and their point of view on this. The sniper attack on Power Station proves that the Department of Homeland Security is only capable of security theatrics and not real security. And I would certainly agree with that, and that is what I was hoping to communicate yesterday, but I just wanted to reinforce that idea a little bit. From Daily News, NBC to give Jay Leno $15 million to leave Tonight Show before contract expires. And Alex Jones has offered some explanation for this, or a possible explanation from InfoWars. Was Jay Leno canned by NBC for criticizing Obama? And obviously the fact that they are posing the question implies that InfoWars, and Alex in particular, does, according to what he's expressing on his show today, believe that it's very likely that this is why Jay Leno was fired. So, and we've heard, of course, of other celebrities who've had issues, who spoke out against Obama. James Woods has publicly said that he will never work again in Hollywood, and he knows that that is so, and it's because of the public stand that he's taken in opposing Obama. So, as I mentioned, in light of Philip Seymour Hoffman, my okay, granted, far out opinion that he may have been intentionally killed, partly so that they would have the excuse to try out this CGI representation of him in completing the Hunger Games. How convenient would it be for the administration, well, not the Obama administration only, but the cabal? How convenient would it be for them if they could have icons who would never speak out against any of their plans? You know, if you could take free will out of the equation, it would help them package their message a lot more efficiently and effectively. And I would not be surprised if they have that kind of a plan. And certainly in getting rid of Jay Leno and James Woods not working again in Hollywood, they're taking away a platform that many people have had from which to speak. And I think it's becoming more predominant. I mentioned weeks ago that Meryl Streep had spoken out against Walt Disney, and of course Roseanne Barr is constantly speaking out against injustices in Hollywood. And just as an aside, Roseanne is a very fun person to follow on Twitter. I don't agree with everything she tweets or everything she believes, but she puts a lot of good stuff out there. In a somewhat related story to Jay Leno, the media being noted for speaking out against injustices, this article from Natural News states, ABC News sued for broadcasting news about pink slime beef byproducts. And the company who produced that has, I believe, gone out of business. The article states that they've had to get rid of lay off for 650 employees. The general public, now aware of a highly processed ammonia-laced additive hiding in some beef, quickly came to realize that we have all been tricked, ultimately driving all of that potentially contaminated beef product off grocery store shelves and out of fast food restaurants and school cafeterias. So this company is suing ABC and also names some of their people specifically. They're suing for $1.2 billion in damages. And my understanding has always been that if you report something that's true, you can't be sued because it is true, and it's not libelous. So I'm not sure how they're justifying this lawsuit, and it'll be interesting to see whether they win it or lose it. But certainly, you know, as Jay Leno has a right to exercise his First Amendment right to free speech, does not journalism exist to get the truth out there, to let people know what's going on a very fundamental level? That is the reason for journalism. And I haven't made a big deal about the subway issue, but that's somewhat related to this because of the pink slime, the food additive. When media makes a big deal of something, I tend to be a little suspicious. And as they say, all publicity is good publicity, and with a brand name like Subway, I think that may be the case. I think it's great, first of all, that they are committing to remove this toxic chemical from bread. Why was it there in the first place? Well, that's a different matter. But okay, so they're taking it out. Cool. But why is there this huge media acknowledgement? Like, you know, most of the time, the good things that we root for, you rarely see. They might get, you know, a paragraph at the back page of the paper or something. But look at this: Subway to remove chemical from bread. USA Today, BusinessTime.com, CBS News, CNN, NBC News. This is making a huge media splash, and I suspect that there is, you know, I'm not sure exactly what they have tried to do with this, how they're trying to craft opinion with this story, but I am fairly convinced that this is, you know, maybe not as great as what it seems. It's nice to acknowledge a victory, no matter how minor, and of course there are more major victories now that we can rejoice in. Hopefully this will at least highlight the topic of some food being unsafe. So we'll watch that. But, you know, on one hand, ABC is being sued for exposing fraudulent ingredients, you know, tricking people into buying beef that they're not really getting what they paid for. They're getting pink slime when they buy beef. They're being sued for that, but, you know, Subway is using this as a PR opportunity. Maybe that's just good marketing smarts. Who knows? For a somewhat more serious article from Ben Swan, Nancy Pelosi and fellow Democrat calling for a change in the Constitution. Now, I always get a little nervous when I hear about, you know, change in the Constitution, and even Karen Hudes, who I really like and for the most part trust, when she talks about having a constitutional convention, I get nervous because, you know, I'm afraid that there's potential for us to lose what we have, the protections that we have. So this caught my eye that Nancy Pelosi and another Democrat want to change the Constitution. And as I read through this, not having knowledge of the background of this, it almost sounded to me as if Nancy Pelosi was doing a good thing. But because my knowledge and understanding of this is limited, I have a special guest here today. Don is here to shed a little more light on what Nancy Pelosi is probably really pushing on us.
I think we have to pass a new constitution so we can find out what's in it. Don't you?
Well, you know, there are a lot of things that the Supreme Court seems to find in there that I have never read, but you know, the document is available, and it's not many thousands of pages like Obamacare.
You can buy pocket constitutions in most good freedom fighter stores, so there you go. Yeah, but what's really going on here is a blatant power grab. Well, maybe it's not so blatant because it's not all that easy to see through. Pelosi's making the argument that big business is controlling elections, and they can buy whoever they want. So let's limit big corporations from funding politics. Take the money out of politics, you know, a common left-wing slogan. So sounds good on the surface, but you know, and I'm not saying that there's not some merit to some kind of approach like that, but what you actually do when you put government in charge of deciding how campaigns are run is that you solidify your insider cabal control, because the foxes are put in charge of guarding the hen house. They determine what is, you know, who has the right to campaign and what is fair and balanced, and you know, it's not what you or I might think, you know. So the only real, you go back and you think about the environment that our founders were in when they set up the country. They presumed that men of good character would want to go into office to benefit their fellow man, that they would be men of means, that would have support, that they wouldn't need to cushion their bank accounts from special favors to lobbyists, etc. But all that has been turned on its head because of the cabal control of the banking system, the international banking cartel, so that now people can't get elected to office without giving special favors to get campaign money so that people even know who they are, and these guys control the media, etc. So the real solution is not to try to pass more laws. Passing more laws is kind of like trying to continue to put Band-Aids on somebody that's taking their dying breath or something. It's way too little, way too late, and it's doomed to failure because it doesn't address the root cause. In this case, the root cause isn't really a flaw in the Constitution. It's a flaw in the character of the people that allowed a banking system to take over the money system, which the people themselves are supposed to control via Congress. So we have to take back our monetary system, and we have to become, once again, a moral and religious people. The founders, there's many founders that are associated with this quote where they said that this form of government is good for a moral and religious people and won't do for any other. So we need a massive revival in this land, and we also need a return to a sound economic basis, honest weights and measures in our economic system. That's what is the answer. So when you become a surface analyst and only look at the symptoms, you end up looking at things like what Nancy Pelosi is talking about here, and they sound good, but all they do is give you the illusion that the rot is under control when it's not.
And what she is hoping to counter and overturn is this decision, Citizens United versus Federal Elections Commission, which you said is really a First Amendment issue, and that if they would do something to counter this, it would impact upon First Amendment rights to give to whatever, to do what you want with your money, effectively.
A lot of people on the left like to point to the Citizens United decision by the Supreme Court to say that corporations are buying free speech, or that free speech is for sale, but to corporations. Now, there is some truth to that, but putting government in charge of deciding what's free speech is even worse. So if you're telling somebody that they can't form an entity and take political action with that entity, well, you're just creating a police state. You're creating a state in which the state controls what you're allowed to do with your money. And people on the left often make a big distinction between individuals and corporations, But all corporations are entities that are created under the law by individuals. So ultimately, you're restricting your own rights. You're so mad at the abuse that you are binding your own self. And of course, the little guy's not going to see it that way, but that's what it is, and it always ends up being. Free speech is such that you've always got to give it to the guy you disagree with, and that really applies to big corporations too. You've got to get the truth out there, whether by whatever means, and allow people to make up their own minds. So thank God we have the internet now, because the corporations have gobbled up the media into, I think it's now 5 major corporations that control the vast bulk of the mainstream media. So you don't really have an opportunity for real reform unless you can reform the media, but that's well underway with the internet. So yeah, Citizens United, I actually think it was a good decision because it did not allow government to become the regulator of free speech. It did not restrict corporations the way that people on the left wanted to, but I think in the long run that's a good thing.
Well, and perhaps at the time of the decision, it squeaked through the Supreme Court because perhaps at that time the powers that were believed that this would tend to benefit their candidates, and as momentum is gained by free people to oppose them, and there's more potential for us to organize, maybe form some corporations. Maybe that's why all of a sudden it's lost its appeal, and some of the cabal-backed people are trying to bring about a change that will neutralize.
Well, I think it's the cabal-backed people trying to get government in control because they currently control government. This is those of us that think that there really is a power shift going on tend to see a lot of things that are last-ditch, last-dying gasp efforts at maintaining control, and that's how I see this. I see it as Pelosi and company wanting to grab hold of government and say, while they're in control, and say what can and can't be done, and basically be like in the position of Hitler when he passed laws that made it so that you could do whatever you wanted to Jews. And this, as just as it may seem on the surface, and what Germany did to the Jews seemed just on surface to many people, you've got to go with first do no harm and minimal government. I think that's always the best solution in the long run. Now, until we take back the monetary system, there's going to be a lot of abuse of that. But we've got to go there step by step.
Next, I have an article from Blacklisted News. Obama regime's climate hub plan will help destroy small American farms and ranches. And as Don just stated, the more government control is not a good thing, particularly when you consider that the whole idea of climate change based on CO2 emissions is actual, is true, is real, which of course it isn't. So this whole thing, it has a cracked foundation, and they're building on a cracked foundation, but it is an excuse for them to extend the reach of their arm. And this is the article that breaks the news from CNN Politics. U.S. sets up climate hubs to help rural communities affected by extreme weather. And of course, family farms already have more regulations to deal with than sometimes it's difficult for them even to remain in business because of the regulations. And this is going to just add another layer of regulation to them who are already beset upon by the federal government. So hopefully, it sounds like this is a done deal, but maybe locally people can picket or oppose on some level. And from Ben Swan, federal government legalizes hemp. And this was kind of squeaked by in an agriculture bill. I'll just read this paragraph. After 3 years of negotiations, the Farm Bill passed both chambers of Congress on Tuesday. Hemp wasn't necessarily one of the largely debated topics. However, hidden deep within the bill, a clause lurked that allows for colleges and universities to grow hemp for research purposes pending the respective states have legalized hemp. So on a certain level here, the federal government has given the nod to legalized hemp and to states that have legalized hemp. So this is an interesting little bit of news for us to follow in the future, see what develops from this. I have an article from InfoWars that is a Pew study. Christians are the world's most oppressed religious group. Number of countries where religious groups were harassed across all years, any time between June 2006 and December 2012. And Christians figure very largely here. And Muslims do as well. Muslims come in a very close second. And, we can think and say what we like about Muslims. They do profess faith in God, and they claim, people who are aware of the Dome of the Rock and what is really worshipped, the Black Rock, are aware that they're not actually worshiping the same God, but they believe they are worshiping the same God as Christians. And so this kind of persecution is really pretty significant.
Yeah, I just wanted to interject that as long as you have a belief in God that is your most important allegiance as an individual is to obey God, then you are going to be a threat to the government. The only alternative to that is a pantheistic religion of worshiping the earth, in which case the government has an earth religion prepared for you.
And they are kind of trying to lead us down that path with green agendas.
Yeah.
And
that's where they want to go.
Sure. So this is, this article is kind of in defense of the Christian faith. I have an article, kind of a companion article from Mercy Triumphs by Fritz Springmeier, Keeping the Common Man Quiet, How the Illuminati Regulate the World Order's Religious System. And it's kind of an interesting contrast. I mean, we want to defend our faith and be able to practice our faith. But Fritz is stating here in this article that the church is actually what is referred to in the Bible as, Christendom, not the actual church, is Babylon the Great. And Fritz's concluding paragraph, the biblical wording for Christendom is Babylon the Great. Actually, the Bible's Babylon the Great is a secret religious political structure. Babylon is a symbol for the satanic world order as they are organized under the satanic hierarchy. While it is beyond the scope of this post to give details, when we examine the symbols, the religious acts, the origins of specific religious thoughts and methods, and the genealogies of the elite, we see why the term Babylon the Great fits. The EU pictured themselves as rebuilding the Tower of Babel, and even used the biblical imagery of a lady riding a beast. Even the term Big Brother comes from Babylon. The Illuminati and Freemasonry are both the continuation of the mystery religions. When we go to biblical prophecy, they are called Babylon, Babylon the Great. What we have learned is that the Gnostic continuation of the mystery religions uses the United Grand Lodge of England to distribute orders to the various leaders of the world's religious organizations. So that's the tie-in there, that the Grand Lodge of England distributes orders to the various leaders of the world's religious organizations. And unless you are in a very small independent church, and even possibly if you are there in a small independent church, it is rather likely that these tentacles have reached into your local places of worship. And I won't get too deeply into that. Fritz has explained a lot of this in some detail. This is a very dense post, rather long for Fritz, and has a lot of tremendous information. So the balance is, between being persecuted for true faith and being deceived away from true faith, which typically happens in organized religion. So there's a balance for us to strike here in maintaining our true faith. And there are certainly a lot of challenges to that, but the more aware we are, the better prepared we can be to make some of the determinations we have to make in order to be true and faithful to our God, who is completely and ultimately and always faithful to us. Moving into some more practical news and moving toward the good news of the day. From Natural News Blogs, constantly sick, maybe it's your adrenal glands. And this is good news to some extent because there is something that you can do about this. You can become more healthy by helping your adrenal glands out. And get more rest, sleep, do your best to work on eliminating stress from your life, work on eliminating processed foods from your diet, find a good practitioner who does nutritional response testing. And so there are some great suggestions, as always, from Natural News. And I am ending today's news with this article from Natural News. Just breathe. Ancient practice of pranayama can help you detoxify, shed excess weight, and boost overall vitality. And some Christians might be uncomfortable with the idea of pranayama. It's really just the practice of breathing and using your breath to relax and open up parts of your body and oxygenate all your tissues. So, hoping that you have a pleasant weekend. Just take a few deep breaths and relax. And as a child, I had panic attacks. I'm not exactly sure why. And in the early 60s, I don't think people talked a whole lot about panic attacks. But I did have them. And my father helped me out a lot by saying, just breathe with me. And he would take deep, relaxed breaths and help me to breathe through panic attacks. And certainly that was very helpful. So practice take some deep breaths, even if you don't want to know about pranayama. Relax, drop your shoulders, take some deep breaths, and have a great weekend. Thanks for tuning in for today's 99th Monkey Liberty News. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. Hoping that you will love one another, take care, and insist on liberty.